Would you please welcome Lotta to the stage?
Does this work for me? Can you all hear me? Yes, it's working, right? All right. Can I get that bigger? Okay, I thought we would need to talk about special economic zones because there is a richness of experience out there on special economic zones. We've heard it mentioned here before, and I've been studying this for some time now. And we can learn a lot about the history of special economic zones. We can learn what can go really, really wrong, often without people even noticing, and how special economic zones can actually promote economic development in a very effective way. I've written a book on special economic zones, as was mentioned. It was published in the spring. And I was inspired to write this book because of the questions that came to me when I was doing research on this topic from the Startup Society's community about what we can learn from special economic zones, what we can really learn, because a lot of the literature that you'll find out there will only address how much did export increase in this particular area when it became a special economic zone. What lesson is there in that, right? We don't get much from that. So in the really brief time that I have now, I want to engage a little bit of all that dialogue that I'm having with you now and address a couple of the questions that I'm getting. And then I hope that you can come in the coffee breaks afterwards and ask me more. So why do we really need to talk about special economic zones? I think the major thing here is that special economic zones can sometimes be the key to breaking a political equilibrium that keeps a country in a really poor state and low level of economic development. But maybe more important also, we need to talk about it and we need to study it, because a lot of special economic zones out there, although we say good things about them here, and I am all on board on them having a lot of potential, but I would say most special economic zones out there are actually a net negative for any country. There are a lot of problems, a lot of special economic zones there out in the world. Mainly, it's a matter of the government being very much involved and throwing a lot of money at the project. The projects will look great. You can read a lot about it. It's going to be a lot of production. It's going to be a lot of jobs created. And you won't know how much it's actually just jobs moved. And that's what we need to really talk about. And we need to be critical on special economic zones on many occasions. So let's take a step back here and ask what these zones actually are. So Joe Quirk did mention this. These are really areas where the government generally designates as having different rules from the rest of the country. Often, the traditional model here is tariff, tax, and regulatory exemptions. Often very much of the focal on the fiscal side here. Tariff exemptions, tax exemptions, or lower tax in some way. That's a general model. In my mind, I generally divide it into three areas in terms of size, really. The traditional zone model, this is a picture from an export processing zone in the border on Dominican Republic and Haiti. This is really the industrial zone model. It's generally, you have a few plants in there. People do not live in these zones. They come into work. And if you invest in these zones, you get these exemptions that the government is offering you, like fiscal exemptions and so on. Some of these work very well because they're privately developed, but they're still small. It's still kind of, it's hard to draw any lessons from what is happening in those zones because it's just really production plants. Of course, then you also have the much bigger ones. These are the more interesting ones. This is Shenzhen, where you have, such as this one, 10 million people. And this is really when you can get a dynamic of different rules actually creating wealth, and you can see it, and people live there, and you get a whole community. And those are interesting cases, I think, that we should study and emulate. What you often may not hear is that zones also can look something like this. It can be one desk. It can be one company. It basically can be then the government stepping in and saying, this company is now a special economic zones. Don't be fooled by the numbers. Often, if you read reports on different countries and they count number of special economic zones, more than 50% of them might be just one company. And this is the danger with this, because often you might look at the macroeconomic numbers and say, oh, exports are higher there. Well, if you just pick some companies that the government says, hey, you're going to get these tax breaks and this favoritism, we're going to throw money at you, they're going to produce better, they're going to have better results. That's not going to be a surprise. That's not what we want to emulate. And also in the US, it was mentioned, some ports, you have free zones, yes, but you also have so-called single factory zones a lot. And the problem when I see that is, of course, that the smaller you get, the more you get towards these incentive problems, especially economic zones, when it's a way for the government to give favors to particular companies, really. So, just to get a sense of the very traditional model here, it's all about tariffs usually. This is a way for a lot of developing countries to attract international investors that want to import raw material, use the labor on site, and export. And if you carve out this piece of the country and say, hey, the tariffs don't apply here anymore on the edges, it will instead apply on the border between the zone and the rest of the country. You're basically kind of carving out a piece of the country and saying, hey, you can invest here now because you can import and you can export. People can cross the tariff border. People can, and so you can use the cheap labor, and that's it, right? That's the traditional model. And then similarly, single factor zones work as a border around kind of a factory itself. So you're kind of lifting that factory out of the country saying, hey, you're now outside our jurisdiction, we're going to have different rules for you. Okay, that's generally how it works. And then the problem with that, of course, is that you get a proliferation of these small islands, these single factory zones throughout the country. We basically have just a picture of some factories are inside a zone and some are outside, and that's kind of it. And what I want to emphasize here is that the problem with this, of course, that you really cannot see the difference anymore between the government giving targeted tax benefits and the zone model, so to speak. So that's kind of an overview. It might be a bit backward looking, but that's really what I've been looking at here. What do we have right now, and what can we actually learn from it? And I don't want us to be fooled by saying all zones are great ideas, right? So then you are answering. I know that you're asking yourself, is this actually a good thing then? Well, when I started studying this, I basically got two responses from free market kind of economists. And I wonder really which camp you fall into here. So let's take these two, okay? One view is that any move towards liberalization is good. It doesn't matter if you're doing it in a zone or if you're doing a particular policy area. If you take any steps in that direction, that's good, okay? This is basically me talking to my professors at George Mason and trying to figure out where they stand on this. Two, discriminatory policies is per definition always bad. It's always going to be a way for the government to try to avoid some liberalization. Why would they ever introduce these kind of policies if they can just do it generally in the country? I see no reason to do it in a zone. This is probably some bogus government stuff. Completely two different views, right? Who in here would agree with the first one? Who would agree with the second one? Wow, kind of 50-50. I think the first one ruled. I would agree more with the second one, sometimes, right? I think the first one doesn't really tell us much. It doesn't teach us much. The second one is, unfortunately, sometimes true, right? What people fail to realize before you start studying this more deeply is that what zones can actually do, what the real benefit is to change the political equilibrium, so to speak, in a country. If politicians have benefit from a very restrictive system, a non-liberal system economically, especially economic zones can be a way to break that equilibrium. If you get a dynamic starting from the bottom up, I think this is very much what happened in China. It was not the Communist Party saying, hey, let's try some liberalization and see what happens if we have a zone. That was a no-brainer. It was business people who wanted to do business with Hong Kong and say, hey, can we open a zone close to Hong Kong so that we can do business with these guys? They managed to bribe the right politicians somehow, and then you started a process where more people saw that, hey, we can also benefit from this. This is actually a way that I can derive some monetary benefit from this myself. And you see this dynamic of more and more zones happening. That is the area where I think zones really have power. So let's see if I can move on. So I think this is the main question that you want answers to here. And I'm just going to touch on two things because I know I'm short on time. what can we actually learn? What can we in the startup community actually, startup societies community actually learn from special economic zones? I think first, it's really important with political buy-in. That's going to be key. Traditional zones already have this. It's often a very top-down kind of government project. And what we see is that you very seldom see the government actually reneging on their promise, so to speak, of the zone. Once they have initiated it, it becomes a government project, and it's their pride to make it work, so to speak. The problem with that is even if a zone has all the potential to be really successful, once it starts becoming not so, the government goes in and throws money at it to make it look great. And everybody comes in there, and the World Bank people go in there, and it looks great, and they can measure how much more export it is compared to the rest of the country, and it all looks great. And that's actually, I think, that the biggest threat to most of the zones in the world. It's not that the government is going to come and seize the wealth, because a lot of people worry about that, I know that. That they're going to come in and say, hey, well, I don't think you're going to create wealth, and once the wealth is created, they're going to come and take it over. We don't see that happening. Now, the important question here is going to be, is the startup society's community projects, seed starters and the like, are they going to be different so that you don't have a political buy-in? That might be an issue. And I think that the lesson here is once you get that, you're good. And additional security on top of that, could be to get the political buy-in of the people, to make sure that administrations and policymakers in the future will not renege on their predecessors' promises by sharing the wealth, right? Showing that we're creating wealth for you, we're not detracting anything, we can actually give back a little bit or give some to you in order to distribute it that way. Developing ideas like that is important. The second really important lesson is the special economic zones that you can really be sure have been successful thanks to different rules, not because of the fiscal incentives that they offer to the companies that come in. That is when you can see that you're not detracting wealth, you're not detracting the revenue for the government at all. You can really see areas that create wealth in that way. Now that's an advantage that we already have here, because nobody plans to come in and say, I haven't heard anyone yet. I mean, maybe we've yet to hear somebody saying, hey, we're gonna make the government give us a lot of money and then see how it goes, right? We know that's not a workable proposition. We know that that's not the way to create wealth. And that's an advantage we already have. And we can point to some really good experiences with special economic zones for that. So I encourage you to check out my book if you're interested in learning more. Ask me more questions during the conference. Check out my homepage. I have some of my papers there if you want to learn more. So with that, thank you very much.